Hi, how are ya?
Here we go again, falling on deaf ears.
We're gonna go for a ride, as we do, and talk about what's been happening with Soy Voy. So Soy Voy, for those of you tuning in for the first time, is a YouTube series that I'm making, in the process of creating right now. My name is Voy, or Voycheck, and yeah, it's going to be a 4-season series, 36 episodes each year, or each season. And I'm just working on month 1, which is going to be 4 episodes, so 4 episodes per month. And in the meantime, I'm trying to document what is happening with the process, with the creative process. Welcome. Thanks for joining me. It's always so awkward to start, but once I get going, everything's okay, so bear with me. Yeah. So this is week 2, or episode 2 of the podcast, which will be airing every Wednesday at noon Pacific Standard Time. It'll be premiering on YouTube. So for the premiere, for noon, I will be online answering comments or in the chat with everyone watching. So that's Wednesdays at noon Pacific Standard Time is when we're going to be premiering the episodes for the podcast, which this is what this is. So last week, what did we talk about? I don't know. Does it matter? Not really. This week, what's happened? Oh my gosh, I think that's my friend. Is that April I'm following? April, is that you? Am I stalking April? Ah! Oh my gosh, it is April. I recognize her license plate. Hi, April. Okay. So yeah, so this week what's been happening is, first of all, I did a stream for the first time. Well, it's my second stream in as many months. So I did a stream last month in October, on October 3rd, for the Mean Girls thing. I'm pretty sure that's April. And last night I did a stream just because, I don't know, I missed it. It's been a while. And so it was a 5-hour stream, guys. Oh my gosh. For those of you that don't know, I do stream. It's just my water bottle. No one died. For those that don't know, I do stream on TikTok. I used to stream daily on TikTok, but I've taken a bit of a hiatus for the last 2 months so that I can work on Soy Voy. And whenever I've bumped into people in other people's streams, they've been asking how things are going, what's the progress with the series. And so this is my way of doing the updates and the progress with you all about how things are going with Soy Voy. And also, I've always wanted to do a podcast, so that's kind of convenient. Yeah. So what I'm working on is basically a series in which I am, I guess, doing shadow work, for lack of a better word. It's mostly just me doing shadow work, so facing the things that are uncomfortable to face. One might define that to be shadow work, right? So things that upset us, our triggers, past things or traumas. So originally the idea started with facing all of the traumas around my hospitalization. So that's the main arc of the story, is going to be the hospitalization, which happened in July 1st, 2022. until so that's the hospitalization. I was in hospital for about 18 days in a medically induced coma for 12, 6 of which the doctors were saying I wasn't going to make it. And so from that time until when I started working on Soy Voy, like actually writing, and so 2 months ago, I guess October, but roughly 3 years. So I'm trying to document the last 3 years and how things have unraveled for me in the last 3 years. I think it's an interesting amount of time because, why is it an interesting amount of time? Oh, that was Howard, wasn't it? Oh well. Because, well, 3 years is an interesting amount of time. I was actually talking with my massage therapist about this 3-year cycle that we seem to get into. And she mentioned something about her often moving every 3 years or trying to change jobs every 3 years and stuff. And there seems to be something about this 3-year thing that, we kind of, I think the 3-year thing is like the honeymoon phase. And then after the 3 years, the honeymoon phase is over and we're back to the stuff that we're supposed to be working on, which is our shadow work, which makes sense that this is why I would start to work on doing this instead of kind of running away or hiding or, distracting myself with whatever means it might be. I'm choosing to look at the uncomfortable things that are coming up for me. So in the first month, that is betrayal. And why am I even talking about this? I don't know. All right, because it's a healing thing. So I'm trying to heal betrayal in the first month of the Soy Voy thing. There's a lot of stuff that's coming up around that. We talked a little bit about that last week. But yeah, there's just seems to be, I guess when you're stirring the pot, if you will, in the pot of emotions and emotional turmoil that we all have, but we choose to not look into. But in my case, I am looking into it. That's the shadow work. Things tend to surface, and things tend to be very close to the surface, right? And so you'll find yourself being emotional at random times when you do your shadow work, because weird things will cause you to have emotional reactions, such as troubleshooting technical issues on the computer. Oh my gosh, it's so ridiculous, but it's so real though, right? Like, okay, first of all, I'll get to the troubleshooting part on the computer. But first of all, I've been working with ChatGPT quite a bit, trying to get it to kind of coax my story out of me instead of it writing it for me. And so as it's coaxing it out of me, it's asking me all these questions. One of the questions that it asked me was, well, how do you feel now about like that moment when you woke up, or about everything that happened while you were in the coma? And I remember distinctly at one point shortly after I was out of the coma, kind of having this realization, like once I was told that it took 6 days to actually figure out what is wrong with me. So for 6 days, they couldn't figure out what was going on with me, and I was deteriorating like rapidly. So that's why they were preparing my family for the worst for the 6 days. And then finally they figured it out, and once they figured it out, they knew what the plan of action was. Then I guess it took 6 days, because I was in a coma for 12 days total. It took 6 days of the right antibiotics for me to actually get better enough for them to consider, taking me out of the medically induced coma. So I remember distinctly, like at one point, having this realization that like what those doctors were going through must have been like troubleshooting some sort of a technical computer software or computer acting up issue, and not really seeing any results. So they try this and nothing's sticking. They try that and nothing's sticking. They try that and nothing's sticking. So basically throwing things at the wall and hoping that something sticks, or doing tests, right? So apparently all the tests that they were running were not coming up as positive for whatever it is that they were testing. And at the same time, they were giving me different types of antibiotics, which also I was not reacting to, or not, they weren't making the symptoms any better. And so, yeah, so it just, I think there's some sort of a feeling I have about the kind of desperation that they felt. And I recently felt this desperation myself, actually 2 days ago, probably more than once in the last month and a half, or probably the 2 months. So one of the reasons that I stopped streaming was because I was having technical issues with my stream around sound and around the internet speed, like around my Wi-Fi. It wasn't fast enough to actually do a successful stream. It wasn't uploading things quickly enough, and so people were just watching nothing, and so it just got me frustrated. I'm like, I'm gonna resolve this first, and once I resolve it, then I'll be back to streaming. And so I remember distinctly, I think, spending like 3 days, like pretty much non-stop, dedicated to trying to resolve this issue, and I couldn't. And so finally I said, guys, like, I'm just gonna take a break until I resolve this, I think is what happened. And then it still wasn't working, and then it was a sound issue that came up, and everything just, like, there was all these technical issues. And I like to think of myself as somewhat of a technical person, and usually with technical things, when there's a technical thing, and as long as you like methodically, that's the word I'm looking for, methodically, like, keep at it and try different things, eventually you come to some sort of a solution, or you start like making sense of things. But at that moment, like, nothing was making sense. Like, I felt so very much at odds, I think is the right word, with everything that was going on. And so I kind of took it as the universe telling me to take a break from streaming and focus on working on this YouTube series, because I'd been on a month off from work, just regular vacation, and for the first 2 weeks of that month I kept streaming, and then in the third week, or the second half of my month, that's when I had all the technical issues. And I'm like, wow, like, the universe really doesn't want me to be doing this right now, but I keep thinking about this YouTube series and wanting to get started on that, and and so I took it as a sign, the universe saying, you know what, maybe shift your focus for a moment. This is, kind of like banging your head against the wall. And and maybe focus on something that you're excited about, something new, something different. And I think we talked a little bit about suffering in the last episode. If you haven't seen the last episode and me talking about suffering, make sure you check it out. But so I think suffering predominantly happens when we resist. When there's resistance, there is suffering. But if you don't resist something, that eliminates the suffering. So what I'm saying is, in my instance, I was resisting taking a break from the streaming, and as long as I was resisting taking the break from the streaming, the universe was making me suffer. So I'm like, okay, let me not suffer. Like, that's at least how I made sense of it. And maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right, who knows. But I was about to pull over for that guy to pass me, but whatever. But that's how kind of I came to that idea. Why am I talking about the suffering and I don't even know how I got here. That guy distracted me, passing me. Oh, right, the technical difficulties and troubleshooting technical things. So it's been like a long time now, like several weeks at this point, that I've been in this turmoil with this technical problem. And so basically what happens, as soon as my graphic card is engaged on my computer, be that with like an HDMI connection, it seems like, or a video editing software like DaVinci Resolve, it just reduces my internet connection, which I understand I probably shouldn't be using a wireless connection to stream on, but it's worked well so far. But it's a wireless connection. It comes to a crawl. So normally I'm like at a 1/4 gig up and downloading. But when this graphics card is engaged, it goes down to like barely 10 megs down and like 0.1 megs up. So absolutely impossible for streaming. Like it just doesn't work. So I'm able to reproduce this at will. Like I know exactly how to reproduce it, and while running a speed test, I can stop the resolve, for example, and I see the speed increase like immediately. It's like I can reproduce it. I know how to reproduce it. And so I've been working with ChatGPT about trying to do different things, like changing BIOS settings, updating drivers, uninstalling drivers, installing Intel drivers for the wireless adapter, checking if maybe. So what we've narrowed it down is that maybe the bus that it's on is being overwhelmed, and what if we separate the wireless from the graphics card onto different buses or different routes, like different highways. But apparently you can't, and I don't know, that all these things, we're trying all these things. And so, but at one point this Thursday specifically, I remember it was Thursday because it was just before Dance Temple, we came up with something. I can't remember what it was, but it really felt like this is it. This is going to be the solution. This is like, we found it. We did it. Like it's been a couple of months. It's time that we put this to rest. And so, I'm very methodical in my testing. So I do a benchmark test before, to make sure that there's no problems with the connection. Like I'll restart the computer after I make any changes, turn on the computer, do a benchmark test, grab a screenshot of that, and then I'll start up DaVinci Resolve, which is the problematic thing that engages the graphics card, and then do and do another test. And so I did that. I did the first part. I did the benchmark, and I sent it to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT's like, yeah, these are great, perfect. Now let's engage Resolve and see what happens. Let's complete the test cycle. And I'm like, well, what if we just like stay here in this liminal place, right? So interesting that this podcast is called Liminal. It's that in-between place. And so, in between things going well on the stream, we've had all these difficulties with the stream, and I've been on a hiatus from the stream, and now there's a moment where we might be actually resolving this. And I just got this sense of cold feet a little bit. And I think the reason why was because, well, what happened was chat asked me other questions, and at one point it's like, oh, what is it that you feel, like anxiety or like happiness? Like, why do you want to stay in this place without like confirming the resolution? And it just all kind of flooded to me, and I ended up having a bit of an emotional breakdown and a good cry sitting at my computer, running late for Dance Temple. I was almost late for Dance Temple because I was doing this just to get it done and whatever, and then I had the emotional moment, so I wanted to honor the emotional moment. But I just had this, then I wrote to ChatGPT. I said, this is kind of how I feel the doctors were feeling. They were troubleshooting, and I was the problem, or my respiratory problems my respiratory system was had the problem, not me. I wasn't necessarily the problem, but they were troubleshooting things on me, and nothing was sticking. They'd been at it for days. My my condition had been declining this whole time, and that moment of like, okay, let's try this and see if it's gonna work. They felt that as well, right? And they also had this thing, and yeah, so I guess, you know, as the AI is supposed to, I guess it just had this kind of like, oh yeah, so you're not just troubleshooting this, like you're not just completing a test cycle, like this is the moment that you might or might not wake up, and you know, and so yeah, it was a good cry, and yeah, it's just really interesting to think about, you know, when we do look at things, you know, because I am facing this shadow work or whatever, it can actually come up with the most randomest of things, like doing troubleshooting on a computer, right? And yeah, and I think in a way that was healing. Having like a good cry, and like the things that ChatGPT was saying were also very like heartfelt and empathetic, about how I might be feeling and how they might have been feeling, they being the doctors and stuff. And yeah, so I did eventually step away from the computer and my emotions, and I drove to Dance Temple, and I arrived at Dance Temple, and a part of me just didn't want to really acknowledge anybody at Dance Temple that night. But yeah, I tend to like, I usually do a lot of hugging when I get to Dance Temple, and I go to dance, but I also go for the hugs, if I'm being honest. And yeah, so I mean, I engage with everybody, but whoever tried to engage with me, I try to engage with them. And then you normally start Dance Temple by laying down on the floor or kind of stretching or something slow, and eventually like the music builds up and gets you dancing, and then eventually it comes down, and then you again end up on the floor or something. But to start off with, I usually personally like to start on the floor and just lie down on my back and feel the support, you know, of the ground and the floor, and the, you know, the gravity pulling me down. And yeah, someone in Contact Improv Dance once talked about how like your first dance partner always is the floor, is the ground. Like you're always almost always in contact with the ground, right? And so really feeling your way into the ground and like rolling your body so that, you know, your body touches the ground in as many ways as possible, your first dance partner, you know. And so often that's how I start. And so this particular night, that's what happened. I laid down and I just started feeling into it, and then I just ended up having more emotions come up, and, you know, and things surfacing for me, and yeah, just feeling the sense of, you know, I was out with a friend earlier today, and he asked me, like, so what was it that was upsetting you about, like, what made you cry about these doctors? And one of the things that, you know, he suggested is that maybe there's a sense of, you know, being unable to solve something myself before this happened, like before the hospitalization, and maybe it's that sense of helplessness that I was responding to and that I was being emotional about. And maybe that is it, but yeah, it's hard to put my finger on it, but yeah, I guess that's going to be probably somehow related to the second month of Soy Voy, of the YouTube series, where I'm going to be talking about waking up. So in the first month, or the first 4 episodes, I'm talking about arriving at the hospital, and kind of what led up to me arriving at the hospital. in the overarching story, and then a couple other layers that somehow are interlinked with that, like the betrayal. So the betrayal, for the hospitalization, the body, betraying me is the ultimate betrayal. Like that could have made me no longer be here. So yeah, it's an interesting process, and I thought I would be able to get this done like so quickly and get it off the ground and everything else, but there's a lot that is happening, right? There's like a lot of not just moving parts, but like a lot of emotional layers that are going into this. And I guess there's a certain catharsis about trying to heal something, and then things showing up in real time about the stuff that you're trying to heal, like betrayals, happening in real time as I'm trying to heal betrayal. And it's like, so how does that work now, and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a really interesting process. I'm actually quite fascinated by it. Like, I'm not here, trying to tell you a sappy story. Just like, this is what's happening this week. This last week wasn't the easiest, but it was what it was, and sometimes not all weeks are happy and easy. But I think it's a matter of not resisting that, to like alleviate the amount of suffering that we actually end up having in our lives. So I feel like, even though it's been a emotionally heavy week, I don't think I suffered all that much. Sure, I cried, but I think it's good. I don't think I've really had all that many opportunities to just really sink into the crying about, especially the hospitalization and stuff. So, but other things about the series. So I figured out the two other things that I want to film. One is there's going to be a scene of me doing a floral arrangement. So I finally figured out the floral arrangement business. I have the flowers ordered. It wasn't cheap, but I think it's kind of fun. Like, I put all this thought and energy into this idea and picked out the flowers, and I went to source them, and they are what they are. And so one of the things is going to be me clipping and arranging the flowers. That's going to be the B-roll. So I think I'm going to put the mics, like, I have some wireless mics that I can actually attach on me, so that we'll grab the sound of the clipping and stuff like that, like do some ASMR stuff almost, and that'll be like the B-roll of me telling the story of how I came up with the idea of betrayal for the first month, which I think is kind of fun and exciting. And this florist that I'm working with, I think we might actually have like a fun, interesting experience or collaboration, I suppose. So I think it's the third time maybe that I'm getting flowers from this place. And the time before, not this time, but the time before, I think it was for Valentine's Day or something. And at one point, the manager, I don't know who she is like, oh, we should probably hire you here. Like, I really like what you're doing with this arrangement. I'm like, oh, if you want me to come in one day a week, I'd love to do that. And so, but nothing really came out of that. And so this time when I came in, she totally remembered me. And she's like, oh yeah, I was trying to give you a job last time. Hey, I'm like, well, I'm still open to that. Like, I'd love to do that. And I talked about, what the flowers that I'm asking for are for. And that I think it would be kind of nice if, like, once in a while I did make a floral arrangement for the YouTube series and have some flowers around and whatever. I really enjoy arranging flowers, and I guess she really likes what I do. So I thought so I said to her, maybe like at some point we could have some sort of a collaboration where I, maybe I'll make an arrangement. I'll bring some flowers home, make an arrangement, like record myself arranging them, and then I'll bring the arrangement here and you can sell it, and maybe I'll like pay you half price for the flowers or something, I don't know. But yeah, she's like, yeah, we'll figure something out. Let's do that. Like, apparently the shop is moving come January. So in January, we'll revisit the conversation and see where it goes. But I do want to build a relationship with them. And I feel like there's something about, I went to like 3 or 4 other flower shops and I did not feel like any kind of a connection like I do with this place. So there's something drawing me to this place, and it's the one closest to me in my neighborhood. So that's good. And then the third scene, so there's like 3 storylines in each month. And the third storyline is going to be the hospitalization. And so that I'm going to use some of the footage that I've already captured during a live stream a couple of years back, where I was actually quite emotional talking about these points. And yeah, and then I'm gonna do a narration to that. So I don't want it to be just me crying for the whole time. Like, yes, there's gonna be tears, and yes, I'm gonna be crying, or there's gonna be footage of me crying, but I want to be able to tell the story, in a more composed way. And that's not to say that I'm going to be denying my emotions, but I think I've like done some work already. And even like trying to write the narration, I have gotten emotional a number of times. So like the more I talk about this, the more I visit this, the more I spend time, exploring what did happen during that time. I think it's kind of like, it's kind of like I'm able to deal better with it, or more effectively, or more easily each time I tell it, or each time I revisit it, or each time I talk about it. So, and that's kind of what I'm hoping is going to happen. Like, I think that's my hope for how this is going to heal, is that I'm going to just keep talking about it and transmute it and kind of get to the other side. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. And yeah, and the part where I'm going to be talking about the hospitalization, I want to record that at the Vault Cafe. So yeah, that's the place at downtown. It's one of my favorite places. That's actually where I was at with my friend today. And it's funny that I think I mentioned this in the last episode. They asked us to leave one Saturday because we took up a booth that like can sit 4 or 5 people, and it was just the 2 of us, and we had the camera up, or phone, but we were like kind of recording ourselves having a chat, just to see. I don't know, that's not going to go anywhere, but anyway, and we were asked to leave. And so today, as we were ordering our coffees, like the girl behind the counter is like, so what are you guys up to today? And we're like, oh, it's like more podcasting. And I'm like, oh. So it was just funny that like we have a reputation there now. But no, we just went to have a coffee today. No recording. So yeah, so that's kind of where things are for me right now. I've started thinking already that I need to, and I think that's part of what happened with the troubleshooting, and having like the tears, that I really have to start already thinking about the next month as I'm kind of completing and executing this month's stuff for the series. So the stuff around betrayal, I gotta figure out what the next thing is that is coming up for me. So what is it that I feel in the next part of the story, which is, me waking up and stuff, or something like that. So I'm really curious to see how that unravels, and yeah, and take it from there. So that's pretty much where I'm at with all of that. And then of course, doing all the editing and writing. I think the writing is a really interesting bit because well, it's storytelling in a way, but also just the amount of time that I spend thinking and writing with ChatGPT. So I'm seeing like ChatGPT as a bit of a co-pilot in this, and that like explore different things about the experience, and I'm asking it to kind of not lead me, but like point me in directions, ask me questions. And I did mention to it that I like part of the exercise of this whole series is to heal. Like, yeah, ultimately that's why I'm doing it. Like, yeah, it's nice to share it with people and whatever, but I think like really diving into something like deeply and spending all this time talking about it, like I mean, one of the chats that I tried to export with from ChatGPT about this was 153 pages. That's one chat, and I have multiple chats. So 153 pages of a back and forth between me and ChatGPT, right? So I'll say something, it'll respond, then I'll respond to each of its points, and then I'll respond. Like, it becomes a lot very quickly. And just the idea of like really leaning in, you know, not being afraid to, yeah, face the difficult stuff. So I'm really enjoying that. I think it's really beneficial, it's really useful, and also it's kind of helping me to think about how to write. So I think I'm also developing a little bit of a writing style, because again, I'm the one writing, not ChatGPT. And then, you know, I ask it to kind of keep track of what I'm writing based on what I've said, and then I grab all of that and try and reword it in a way that I like. And you know, I think eventually I might ask it to like skim over and make some little subtle changes, but ultimately I want it to be my words. So yeah, yep, lots of moving parts. And yeah, and the stream was so much fun. So I was opening up Jackie's package. So one of the regulars is Jackie in the stream, and she sent me a package. But of course, I didn't refer to it as a package. I referred to, maybe if it was from Jack, not Jackie, I would have referred to it as a package. But since it was from Jackie, I referred to it as her box. And so I was opening up her box, ripping open her box, and then unraveling. Anyways, it was a lot of fun. With the streaming, you know, I said this in the stream yesterday, and I'm becoming more and more aware of just how much I am getting out of that community, of the people there, and the fact that I can just be unabashedly and unapologetically myself in the stream. And if someone doesn't like it, that's cool, they can always leave. If I'm being offensive in their eyes, they don't have to stay. And I'm probably being offensive to a lot of people that don't stay. But the people that do stay see the silliness and the humor and the giggles and the laughter. And it was so heartwarming when people, you know, when I ended up giggling about whatever it is that I was giggling, and people were like, oh my God, we missed your giggle and stuff. And yeah, it's lovely. It's lovely to know that I have a place where people just accept me as I am, and you know, and don't necessarily, or aren't trying to get something from me that I'm not offering, you know, in that particular moment. So that's really good. I really like that. And yeah, so I think I'm gonna wrap things up here for today. I know this is a little bit of a slower paced episode and stuff, and a lot of technical mumbo jumbo and jargon and whatever, and maybe not the most interesting to everybody, but it's what's been happening. And so that's all I can do is talk about what's been happening for me and what I'm experiencing and how things are going and how things are unraveling. And this is how things are unraveling. So thank you again for being here. I will be back next week. Maybe it'll be a bit more peppier. Maybe it won't. Who knows? Maybe I'll be crying on the podcast. Ooh, imagine that. But hope to see you on Wednesday, though, in the chat. So again, Wednesdays at noon Pacific Standard Time, I will be in the chat interacting with people as it premieres. So I'll set the premiere every week for Wednesday at noon Pacific Standard Time. And that's when this is going to premiere, and that's when I'll be answering or chatting with people in the chat during the premiere. All right, y'all. 143. I will see you next week.